Maha Hatthipadopama Sutta. Now you notice the titles have got some strange marks which we don't use in normal English. Maha means greater, it means big, and the A has got a macron. It's called a macron over it. Macron means something that makes it big. Here meaning longer. So you have the A with the macron over it is pronounced as R. 2 counts. R, 1, 2, like that. Whereas the first A is 1 count. Okay. So Maha, of course, a little longer is all right. Hatthi. Now in Pali and in Indian languages, you usually pronounce every letter. So Hat, there's a double T, 1 T belongs to the front, 1 T goes to the back. Hatthi. Okay. Hatthi means elephant. And then you have, and there's a comma, it breaks up the long, this long compound. There are lots of long compounds in Pali and Sanskrit, and the Germans love this because this is very similar in German, very long compounds. Padôpama. Now you see in the middle of the O there is, I think it's called a carrot, yeah? That little heart-shaped hat over the O. So in other words, this vowel O is made up of 2 vowels. So here you break it up at O, you have pada. Pada means foot or hoof, elephant hoof. And then upama. Upama or opama, it means a comparison, the parable of the elephant's hoof, elephant's or hoof print. In this case, if you read the sutta, the pada refers to the print. And then, of course, sutta means we can translate as teaching. Literally, it means thread. Okay. So, and this is M28, right? The greater discourse on the simile or the parable of the elephant's hoof print or footprint, M28. Then there is the theme. If someone asks you what is this sutta about, and this is to help you, the 4 elements and dependent arising of the 5 aggregates. Okay. And this is SD 6.16, volume 6, sutta number 16. I started translating this in 2005. Now this sutta is taught by Sāriputta. Of course, the Buddha was still alive, and this teaching is special. It's given by Sāriputta. Sāriputta is very famous for, when he gives a teaching, he'll give it in a very elaborate way, in a very interesting way. And I've discovered after studying the sutta this time, how the Abhidhamma people made use of this sutta and extended the 12 elements, in other words, the 6 internal sense bases or sense faculties plus the 6 external sense objects. They are called the 12 elements, into 28 elements. Now we're going to find out more about this a little later, right? So in this teaching, you see Sāriputta making use of the 4 noble truths, and then he relates to the last important point in the last truth, that is the list of suffering, and he takes the last one, which is the 5 aggregates, and he expands on the 5 aggregates. And then he focuses on the first aggregate, as form. And he uses form, and he teaches on the elements, because form refers to matter, and he presents form by way of the 4 elements. And he teaches us how to meditate on each, and then see how this is interconnected with our whole being, our senses, our sense objects, and so on. And how to apply samvega. Samvega is a sense of urgent feeling for practice, right? And also, it's something like what we are telling ourselves, I better do it now, I better practice now, time is running out, something like that. So you're motivated to practice. So we see this amazing sutta in this way taught by Sāriputta. As I told you before, when I look at the sutta, I at first think, oh, this is an easy one. But later, as I look into it, I begin to discover some amazing teachings which are very deep, very profound, very interesting. And it connects with everything else that we have learned. A very important advice I would like to give you about studying suttas is always remember that we are listening to a very ancient piece of music. When you hear music, you don't measure it, you just listen, enjoy it. So when we listen to the sutta, when we read the sutta, we do the same thing. Many of these things we are already familiar with, the 5 aggregates, the 4 noble truths. Now, if you say, oh, I know that, I don't have to listen to it anymore, then you're saying, oh, I've heard this 5th symphony, I've heard the Chopin's nocturne, I don't have to listen to it anymore. It doesn't sound right. So the suttas are meant to be heard again and again. And I've been listening to the suttas. I've been studying the suttas for the last 50 years. And mind you, even these few days, I discover something new, like what I've told you about how the Abhidhamma people expanded on the teachings. So you begin to discover new things every time. You grow with the sutta, and the sutta grows with you. That's how we become happy with the sutta. All right? But let's go down to the translation itself now. Okay, let's go to the translation page. There we are. Mahā Hathipadopama Sutta, the greater discourse on the simile of the elephant's hoofprint, and 28. Thus have I heard. Right, this is recorded by Ananda to remind us our hearts were gathered together, and this suttas are from them, preserved by them for us. At one time, here means this very moment that you and I are gathered together happily, enjoying this good karma to be able to sit here and just look at the sutta. This is again the fruit of so many wonderful good karma we have done, and to be able to hear it, to understand it, to practice it at one time. The Blessed One was staying in Anathapindika's park in Jeta's Grove near Savatthi. So it's not just a mere something to tell where the sutta was given. It also is a reminder that the Buddha is still with us in our memory, that he is our one true teacher. Of course, he's there in this place called India. So he's a historical person. We too can become Buddhas in the sense of become awakened and arhat. Then the Venerable Sāriputta addressed the monks thus. So this 1.2, you see, there is a shift in the scenario. Now it's Sāriputta who speaks. So he calls the monks awuso, friends. Now this is plural, okay, but it's the same word. And the monks assemble together, chant in a resonant awuso, right? So kind of respectfully respond to him. The Venerable Sāriputta said this. The moment you see this line, means the teaching is coming. So Sāriputta starts with the first noble, with the noble truth. Okay. Awuso, or friends, just as the footprint or hoofprint of any living being that walks can be placed within an elephant's hoofprint, So the elephant's hoofprint is declared to be the foremost of them because of its great size. So here you see Sāriputta presenting a very familiar Indian experience. They often see elephant hoofprints on the ground because we don't see that here in Singapore or elsewhere. But you can imagine this hoofprint is quite large because the elephant's foot is very large. Here, Sāriputta is implicating that the hoofprint is the elephant's hoofprints, the largest of all the prints that animals make. So even so, again, you see the moment you see even so, it's going to relate to something higher, to the Dhamma. Even so, also, all wholesome states, all good states, all states that help us to develop our minds can be included, can be found in the Four Noble Truths. In what four? In the Noble Truth that is suffering, in the Noble Truth that is the arising of suffering, in the Noble Truth that is the ending of suffering, in the Noble Truth that is the path leading to the ending of suffering. Yes, you may find the translation a little quaint here, right? You often will see the translation is in the Noble Truth of suffering, Noble Truth of the arising of suffering, and so on. And there have been some discussion here. So some serious scholars are saying, well, the better way would be translated in this way, because if you say the noble truth of suffering, you are emphasizing on the truth, some philosophical statement. But here, we're talking about suffering itself, and that's the noble truth. We're talking about the arising of suffering. That's the noble truth. So this is what the translation means. Okay, so that's why you see a little strange translation here. We're referring to the Four Noble Truth itself. Then Sāriputta goes on to the first Noble Truth. And what avuso is the Noble Truth that is suffering. Birth is suffering, decay is suffering. In the Vinaya, you have an additional line, this is suffering. Okay, all these are familiar. But remember, when you read the sutta, we never jump into conclusions. Oh, I know this. Once you say, I know this, it means you don't know. Okay, so we go further down. We go down, yes. Death is suffering, grief, lamentation, physical pain, mental pain, and despair are suffering. Not to get what one desires is suffering. There's a note 28 that you can read in your own free time. There's some extra lines if you read the Dhammacakka Sutta. So here you find this is probably an older version, surprisingly, than what is recorded as the first sermon. We don't really know what Buddha spoke in the first sermon. So the first sermon was put together as an afterthought, actually. But of course, it does represent certain important teachings the Buddha gave to the 5 monks. But apparently, the definition of suffering is much longer there. Okay, so here you find note 28 that couple of extra points are not given. The most important point is the last one. In short, the 5 aggregates of clinging are suffering. So here what Sāriputta does is this. He brings up the first noble, all the 4 noble truths, and then he focuses on the first noble truth. He talks of the list of sufferings, and then he goes to the last one, the 5 aggregates of suffering, and he elaborates that. So this is his style in this case. So you can see it's amazing how these teachers, these great arahats, teach the Dhamma in different ways. These are variations on the same theme, the Dhamma. So now, Sāriputta asks, section 4, he asks, and what avuso are the 5 aggregates of clinging? See, you don't see this in the first sermon. Right? So here, Sāriputta explains they are the form, aggregate of clinging, the feeling, aggregate of clinging, the perception, aggregate of clinging, the formations, aggregate of clinging, the consciousness, aggregate of clinging. Right here, they're called aggregate of clinging, or some translators render it as the aggregate that is clinging. The association is there all the same anyway. So this is khandha, the aggregate that brings clinging upon us, the kind of aggregate that we tend to cling to. So that's the sense. Right? In other words, here Sāriputta is referring to what we are, the aggregates that make us our form. This is our body, physical body, the feelings, that's what we feel with this body, how we perceive things, how we recollect things, remember things, and then we act on these ideas we have through speech and through actions, and also through thoughts. And the whole background of these actions, that is consciousness. So these are the 5 aggregates. So he has focused on the last item, but next he focuses on the first item in this list of 5 aggregates. Notice section 5, he asks, and what also is the form aggregate of feeling? It is the 4 great or primary elements. And the forms derive from the 4 elements. Now, this is the magic line that I've been referring to that inspired the Abhidhamma scholastics later on after the Buddha's time to expand on this 4 great elements, the 8 great elements, and so on. So here, the Sāriputta is, okay, let's look at form. What is form? Form. One way of looking at form are the 4 great elements, earth, water, fire, wind, which we will later on look at. There is another way of answering this question, actually. What is the form aggregates of clinging? We can also say that the 5 senses, eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body. Okay, that's another way. But here, Sāriputta uses the even more elementary answer, that is the 4 elements, because it's going to use these 4 elements and as the frame for the rest of his teachings. So what's interesting next is you see this line you rarely see. And the forms derive from the 4 elements. Sometimes translated as derivative forms. In Abhidhamma, this is the term they use, derived forms, derivative forms. And the total 28, which I will show you later. Now, if you look at this sutta, what are these derived forms? Now, here again, the sutta doesn't tell you directly, but when you look at the flow of the Dharma, and here, of course, you need the guidance of the teacher. If you are fortunate with a good karma, you have a good teacher, that's wonderful. I don't have that privilege today because it's very difficult to make good teachers. So I have to use my years of learning in the past. I've met some teachers in the past, of course. So I put it together and say, okay, this is what it is. Now it's so clear. It's all here in the sutta, in the next few lines, all right? So look at that last line again. It is the 4 great or primary elements. You either say great elements or primary elements. That's what square brackets means, alternate translation. And the forms derive from the 4 great elements. Sāriputta doesn't say how many. So this is where the Abhidhamma people took liberty and they added in their own number, totaling 28. But how many are there really in the Sāriputta's teaching. Okay, let's look further, find out in a moment, further down. So then, once again, the Sāriputta carefully goes step by step, defines things step by step. So now, 5.2. And what are also other four great elements? They are the earth element, the water element, the fire element, the wind or the air element. Okay, so he lists them, and then he's going to explain them in great detail, as in many other suttas like Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta and so on, Mahā Rahula Sutta. In fact, this sutta is very close to the style of the Mahā Rahula Sutta in terms of the elements. So here, the four elements, you start reading through it, you say, okay, this is meditation on the elements. So you have to like stand back after studying the sutta and then say, okay, what has Sāriputta told us? Okay? And what does this derived matter mean? Now, this is where I'm telling you ahead a bit so that as we go along, you can have a better idea what's going on. Now, you'll find in later part in the sutta, he's going to talk about the elements as your senses. Okay, I mean the form as your sense basis, rupa as the sense basis, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. Okay, so here mind also included, although it's not part of form, just to complete the teaching here. So you have the four elements. I'm sorry, the four elements as the six senses, and then you have the six external senses. So eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind are sometimes called the six internal sense bases. Otherwise, we can use the word sense faculties. They are our sense faculties. We ordinarily use the term sense organs, okay, but we don't usually use this term in the suttas. We say sense faculties. Why? Because these faculties, they have consciousness there all the time. It's the conscious eye, the conscious ear, the conscious nose, and so on. We're not talking about the eyeball, because there is a word akhi, for eyeball. The eyeball by itself won't work. You have the chakku, the eye faculty that works with the rest of your body, with your mind. Okay, so you have the six internal senses and your six external objects. So you have 12 altogether. These are called the 12 elements. When they're 12, they're called 12 elements. And these 12 elements are the derived matter. They are dependent on the four elements. This is amazing, the way that the suttas put it, the way the Buddha teaches this. Our six internal senses, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, the six sense objects, form, sound, smell, taste, touch, thoughts. These are dependent on our body, the four elements. Basically, that's what derived form means in the suttas. So I'm just stopping here for a while, not just to catch my breath, but to help you remember this important point. Okay, six internal senses, six external senses. They're called the 12 elements. These are derived, they are dependent on the four elements. Okay, all right, now I will show you the diagram, or the next thing will show you the diagram. The 3.1, I think. Yeah, table 3.1. Go up to the third page. Yes, go up to the third page, the diagram. 28 forms of materiality. 3.1. Go to the top. Ah, there it is. Yeah. Now it's a bit big, the whole page. So we look at the top page, top of the page first. This is on page 175. Oh, you have the notes. You can see it on your notes, right? Okay, the 28 forms of materiality or material phenomena. In other words, what do the early Buddhists regard, or what early Abhidharma regard as matter? These are 28 kinds of matter. So you can see the references here. These are Dhammasangani, page 127. DHS is Dhammasangani, the first book of the Abhidharma. And then you have the Visuddhimagga, written by Buddhaghosa, page 443. And you have this little booklet, a little book called Abhidharmata Sangaha, translated by a group of people led by Bhikkhu Bodhi. Okay. This is available free, by the way. So if you don't have this book, you want this book, just message us. We'll send it to you free, the PDF that is. So here's the paging. So here, this is a translation by, I think it's Getin, if I'm mistaken, and this is by Bhikkhu Bodhi and company. All right, so there are two versions. Oh, this is by Getin. This is the older one by Rhys Davidson and Burmese teacher. Okay, so you have three versions here. All right. Actually, this G here is Getin, Rupert Getin. His is the earlier one, actually, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, the books are all there. So this gives you the references on how to look into the details if you want to read up on Abhidharma. All right. I would recommend starting with one of these ABHS, Abhidharmata Sangaha. If you're not sure what I'm saying, just remember these words. Please send me ABHS and I will send you the book. It's a little manual to begin Abhidharma with if you are interested. All right. It's a little early Buddhist psychology, if you like. So here you see there are two groups: concretely produced matter, Nibbana Rupa. So these are all, they are solid, right? And here they're not solid, all right? Non-concretely produced matter, Anibbana Rupa. Oh dear, there's a typo here, okay? There's always typo, the Rupa, the macron is missing, okay? So please let me just take a note of this. Now, what's amazing here, you see, even 2,500 years ago, the early Buddhists were aware of words like solid and not solid, okay? So here, just look at this concretely produced matter first. You have the four elements: earth, water, fire, wind, and then eye, sensitivity. Okay, this is the eye, the functioning eye faculty, if you like. Ear faculty or ear sensitivity, because here we're using the Pali, translating the Pali. Nose sensitivity, tongue sensitivity, body sensitivity, right? So these are the, you have here 9, is it correct, the numbering? 9 elements. Huh? Here's 4. How do you get 9 here? Oh, the numbering is wrong. It should be 4. Is it correct? Okay, anyway, here you are. You have 5, you have 4. Here, yeah, here, because these are the elements, 4 of them, and here are the physical senses, 5 of them. All right, so you get 9, all right? This numbering is correct. And then you have the objective phenomena. Here are the sense faculties. This is sense object. So for the eye, there is visible form. Ear, there's sound. Nose, there's smell. Tongue, there's taste, and then tongue, there's touch. Okay, this is an Abhidharma diagram, all right? So they do not number touch as one of the matter or derived matter, because to India philosophy, Abhidharma philosophy, this is not Sutta philosophy, it's Abhidharma philosophy. Touch comprises of 3 elements: earth, fire, and wind. Okay, so they do not take it as a single element. So it's already found the 3 elements. So this is the philosophy. If you study Abhidharma, they will tell you why. All right, so we are familiar up to here. Here we have the 5 internal sense organs and the 6 external sense faculties, of course, plus the actual 4 elements themselves. All right, so you have altogether 13 here. So the numbering is a little awkward. Instead of 14, you have 13. Now, after this comes the Abhidhamma. What's not familiar? Okay, what the Abhidhamma regard as metta also. Femininity, masculinity. All right, so they regard male, female sexes as also forms of metta. And at the heart base, this is the heart, which they believe in those days to be the brain, which contains the mind, right? So this is their belief. And there is life faculty. Okay. And then let's go a bit further down. There's food, 18. I think food is the last, right? Okay, yes, that's good. So this is the food that we take, right? Okay, those are the solid stuff, if you like. Now we come to the not solid stuff, the active aspects of our metta. Okay, here we are. Just go up a bit, please. Go up. Yes, all right. So here you have 19. Space element, space is, there's nothing there, but it's included here in the sense of derived metta. It's derived from metta. It exists with metta. Metta exists in it. And then you have bodily intimation, vocal intimation, body language, speech language. That's regarded as metta. It's quite advanced for the times, right? This also regarded as material form, but it's derived material form. And then these are qualities of metta itself, our body, for example, lightness or agility. And you got to give Pali a bit of space, a bit of latitude, right? So perhaps I could translate agility first in the brackets, lightness, right? So here, lightness doesn't merely mean in terms of weight, it also means in terms of mobility, agility, right? And malleability, we can bend ourselves quite easily. Elasticity, you can, like, pinch yourself a bit, your skin will move. Wilderness, adaptability, you can adjust your body a bit, all right? So these are aspects of the physical body. And then you have what you don't really see, not so quickly though, it grows, right? The body grows. And then there is this continuity of these body parts. This the blood, keeps being produced by the body. There is this continuous aspect of our existence. And of course, there is also decay, and impermanence is a kind of a broad quality of the whole thing. So these are the 28 derived metta. So this is Abhidhamma. So it's interesting to a certain way, but remember, this is what the later scholars, early, you can say they're quite early, but it's after the Buddha's time, kind of came to this conclusion and say, okay, this is what we can say. All right, so with that, I will take a short break. It's 9:05, and then we'll come back at 9:10. Okay, now let us look at what Sāriputta teaches us in terms of talking about the 4 elements, and he connects them with the internal senses, external senses. So in other words, he's actually talking about the derived metta. He's talking about those material aspects which are dependent on the 4 elements before Abhidhamma teaching this. Okay, so let's look at number 6 now, paragraph 6. And what I will show is the earth element. So now begins this reflection on the elements practice. The earth element may be either internal or external. In other words, it is part of us or it is outside, the ecology. So here you see, if you are interested in ecology, you have this teaching here. Look at this teaching, this Mahā Hatthipadopama Sutta or the Mahā Rahulawada Sutta. You have this talk about we are all part of this ecology. So to respect the space around us, nature, and so on, right? So it may be either internal, that is our body, or or external, which is the nature around us. And what also is the internal earth element. Also, whatever that is solid, solidified or clung to internally and individually, belonging to oneself, namely, head has, body has, nails, teeth, skin. So this is called the skin 5. Okay, so if you count, there are 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here we look at the last item, skin 5. And this is earth element, right? So there you are, earth element. This is the solid parts of our body are the earth element. Flesh, sinews, bones, bone marrow, kidney. This is the kidney 5. Heart, liver, pleura, spleen, lungs. So lungs 5. So this kind of in the center of the body. So you find that they come in groups. Okay, mesentery is around the stomach. Bowels, stomach contains dung. Now this is the awkward set. Okay, mesentery, bowels, stomach contains dung. Okay. This is the one that the Abhidhamma added one more brain to make it 32. Otherwise, it's 31. Okay, so there's a not 39 here. So these are the earth elements. So, and Sāriputta goes on to say, or whatever else that is solid, solidified, and clung to internally and individually, belonging to oneself. This also is called internal earth element. All right, so so when we reflect on earth element, we can look at ourselves and reflect on earth element too. And then next, 6.3. Now both the internal earth element and the external earth element are simply earth elements. And that should be seen as it really is with right wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. All right? So here you are. A remarkable statement from 2,500 years ago. The earth element that I am and the earth element outside of me, they are the same earth element. So there's this connection with everything around us. We are the world, in the real sense, the literal sense of the word. We are the world. But, well, not only but, we can say because of this, we cannot say I am this or I own this, because we are all part of everything. Everything is part of us. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. Because all these things we see, internal, external, they are changing all the time. Like we breathe in the air, the lungs process it, and then we breathe out carbon dioxide and so on. We take in solid food, the body processes it, and then it comes out as waste, it goes back to the earth. So there's always this cycle, many, many kinds of cycles. You cannot point at one process to stop it and say, that's it. It's moving all the time. This is called living. Having seen it thus, as it really is, with right wisdom, not some kind of philosophy, but the right kind of wisdom based on impermanence, one is revolved by the earth element. By wisdom, the mind becomes detached, lust-free. Okay, this is the word which embarrassed many scholars. They say, wow, this is quite a strong word, nibindati, nibida, which is the noun. Why not use the word, some nice words like disenchanted? If you use the word disenchanted, you lose the meaning. What does it mean, you know? It sounds nice, and you study it, you forget about it, you write papers on it, and get your pay, and then that's it. You forget about the suttas. But we want to know the suttas, right? So revolves means you say, what? This is the earth. This earth is all the time changing, and we are taking this food, and then we are avoiding it, and then it goes back to the earth. So you say, wow, I'm not going to have anything to do with this, in the sense that I'm not going to be attached to it. All right. So that's how you stop clinging to the earth element. You take it as it is. You know what it is. You don't hate it. It's just that you take it as it is. It's earth element. There's nothing there you can own. That's you. nothing to crave about. Okay, so that's the meaning here. Take it as it is. It changes. It is unsatisfactory, and it is non-self. Now, Sāriputta talks about the external earth element. Now, also, there comes a time when the external earth element, sorry, there's a typo here, should be earth element, right? Here, external earth element. Let me make a note there. The 7 is agitated. Okay, so the earth is disturbed and the external earth element vanishes. Also, when this external earth element, great as it is seen to be impermanent, subject to destruction, subject to disappearance, subject to change. Even the earth itself changes. What more of this body? This body is made of earth element too. What more of this body that lasts but for a short while, but which is clung to by craving? There can be no considering that earth element as I or mine or I am. So there you are. The Sāriputta is teaching us non-self, non-self. Okay, so you find it's a standard definition, and then he teaches us how to reflect this as non-self. All right, impermanence leading to unsatisfactoriness to non-self. So here the idea is to be revolved with this earth element. Why? Because it changes. It's all the time. It's becoming different, and it is not satisfactory, and there's no self behind it. You can't own it. Right? So this is the external earth element also is affected. It changes. You have landslides, you have earthquakes, the land sinks underwater, and so on. And this whole planet will dissolve in due course. All right. So what does this mean? This we come to mental application. So then also, if others abuse, revile, scold, harass a monk who has seen the earth element as it really is, he understands thus: this painful feeling born of ear contact has arisen in me. It is dependent, not independent. Okay. Dependent on what? Dependent on contact, right? So here you can put any of the contacts, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body. Right? So all these arise dependent. Here is used because we hear people saying nasty things, and we hear people quarreling. We don't take it personally. We don't get upset. We just let it pass. We say, well, we have ears, so we hear these things, right? So this ears is dependent on sound, and that's what we hear, right? So it's dependent on contact. Further down, then he sees that contact. So now Sāriputta goes on from contact, he goes to feeling and so on. So contact is impermanent. From contact there arises feeling. Notice here, contact, feeling. Here contact refers to the body, right? Feeling, perception, formation, consciousness. You have the 5 aggregates again, right? Contact is impermanent. It's repeated here to remind us, to reflect. That is the sensing of touch is impermanent. Feeling is impermanent. Perception is impermanent. Formations are impermanent. Consciousness is impermanent. Only when all these are impermanent, we can make sense of things, because if they're fixed, we won't have any knowledge. We won't know anything. And his mind plunges into that very object, that is the element earth. So his mind sees into this earth element, brightens with faith. If you're happy, you say, wow, I know, I'm so happy that I know. And becomes steady and resolute. So knowing this knowledge makes us feel happy and calm, and we want to move on with our practice. All right, so we're not concerned with all the nasty things we hear people say. 9. Now, also, if others were to assail, now this is getting a bit bad, right? People attack us. Here, among refers to us in a manner that is unwished for, undesirable, disagreeable, through the touch of fists. It is a very nice way of putting it. In other words, you get punched, a touch of fists, the touch of clods of earth. This will happen to Angulimala, you remember. People were very angry with him and they threw clods of earth at him. The touch of sticks, they hit him with sticks, and the touch of knives. He understands this. This body is of the nature that it is assailed by the touch of fists, the touch of clods of earth, the touch of sticks, or the touch of knives. All right. Now, this is the advice to the monks. You should not be violent in any way, because the body is such that it will receive all this violence. It is on the end of this kind of situation, because that's the way it is, because we have a body. But this has been said by the Blessed One in his parable of the saw. Okay, so this one is the famous parable of the saw, if you remember. Pañc'upā Sutta. Bhikshus, even if robbers or low-down people were to sever you limb by limb with a two-handed saw, whoever, a monk or a nun, gives rise to a mind of hate towards them would not be a doer of my teaching. So this amazing statement of non-violence. It's not easy to practice. Right? So here, it's difficult for you to imagine it. Important thing is, what is the Buddha trying to say? The Buddha here is stressing, do not be violent in any way. Okay? That's the way people are. And because you have a body, you feel hurt. So what must we do as practitioners? 9.2. So tireless energy shall be roused in me. So this is what we say to ourselves. I shall put in every effort to practice. Undistracted mindfulness shall be established. My body shall be tranquil and unagitated. The mind concentrated and unified. So here we're talking about the meditator. And so let there be the touch of fists, the touch of clods of earth, the touch of sticks, or the touch of knives upon this body. For this is just how the teaching of the Buddha is practiced. Right? This is a real statement of non-violence. And then Sāriputta goes on to talk about samvega, urgent feeling of religious practice, or urgent religious feeling, if you like, urgency. Practice now. Also, when that monk that recollects the Buddha, thus recollects the Dhamma, thus recollects the Sangha, if equanimity supported by the wholesome is not established in him, then he rouses a feeling of urgency, samvega, thus. Okay, here his mind should be calm by then. You can recollect the three jewels. The Buddha is the teacher, the teaching, and then the Sangha. He's the monk now, or you can reflect on the noble saints and so on. And he feels peaceful. That's good. If it's not peaceful, then let's go down what to do. Then it says, it is a loss to me. It's no gain for me. It is bad for me. It's not good for me. That when I thus recollect the Buddha, thus recollect the Dhamma, thus recollect the Sangha, equanimity supported by the wholesome is not established in me. I don't feel calm. I don't feel peaceful. My mind is not equanimous, peaceful, unshaken. So the Sāriputta says, also, just as when a daughter-in-law sees a father-in-law. Okay, this is in Buddha's time, right? She rouses a sense of urgency to please him. So when the daughter-in-law sees the father-in-law, he wants to make sure the father-in-law is happy. Even so, when that monk thus recollects the Buddha, thus recollects the Dhamma, thus recollects the Sangha, if equanimity is supported by the wholesome, meaning it's a good kind of calmness, mental equanimity, is not established in him, he rouses a feeling of urgency. He says, I better get this feeling of urgency. But also, if when he does recollects the Buddha, recollects the Dhamma, thus recollects the Sangha, equanimity supported by the wholesome is established in him, then he joyfully approves of it. He says, Sadhu, that's good. At that point, so much has been done by the monk. So he has attained a level of calmness. He has practiced the Buddha's teaching to that extent. Okay, now let's go to a new element further down. This time we look at the water element. So just now we reflected on the earth element. So here, this is the water cycle. Cycle here meaning cycle of meditation. How do we reflect on water element here? You can see how amazing the Sāriputta teaches this practice. Earth element alone, you can practice quite a big cycle. Now the water element. If you like water, okay, you reflect on water. And what also is the water element? The water element may be internal or external. And what also is the internal water element? Also, whatever that is liquid, liquefied, clung to internally and individually belonging to oneself, namely bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat. Okay, so this is the sweat 5, fat, tears, tallow. Tallow is the oil on the skin, saliva, snot, synovial fluid, urine. Okay, so this is the urine 6, I think 2, 4, 6, 7, urine 7. So that's how you name this list. No? So this is a water element of the body, or whatever else that is liquid, liquefied, clung to internally and individually belonging to oneself. This also is called internal water element. And then Sāriputta reminds us, now both internal water element and the external water element are simply water elements. The liquid in our body, the liquid outside are the same, right? So we should not say this. You should reflect with right wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I'm not, this is not myself. Having seen it thus, as it really is, with right wisdom, one is repulsed by the water element. So by wisdom, the mind becomes detached, lust-free. So this is how we distance ourselves from being attached to the water element. Then the external water element. Now here again, Sāriputta uses what happens outside of us. Now also there comes a time when the water element is agitated. It carries away villages, towns, cities, districts, and countries. It's great flood may arise. There comes a time also when the waters in the great ocean sink down 100 leagues, 200 leagues, 300 leagues, 400 leagues, 500 leagues, 600 leagues, 700 leagues. Here, a league is a short measurement. Probably is there's a note here, 67. What does it say? 67. It's a yojana, okay? So yojana is the length of about seven miles roughly. Okay, so basically here you can go down the water keeps going down and down until there is no more water. There comes a time also when the waters in the great ocean stand 7 palm trees deep. Now it's even the measurement is shorter. 6 palm tree deep, 5 palm tree, 4 palm tree, 3, 2, only 1 palm tree high, if you like, or deep. There comes a time also when the waters in the great ocean stand 7 fathoms, 6 fathoms. So this fathom is the height of a person. 5, 4, 3, 2, only 1 fathom, the height of a person. And there comes a time also when the waters in the great ocean stand half a fathom, only waist deep, only knee deep, only ankle deep. So it'll be no more water left in the world. So this is one way that the world will be destroyed, so to speak, in the far, far distant future. There comes a time also when the waters in the great ocean are not enough to wet even the joint of a finger. When this external water element, great as it is seen to be impermanent, subject to destruction, subject to disappearance, subject to change. What more of this body? Right? There's water in this body, but it lasts for but a short while, but which is clung to by craving. So why cling to it? There can be no considering of the water element as I or mine or I am. So even the water element out there is impermanent. So don't be attached to the water element inside us. Further down. So here again, Sāriputta applies to how we should strengthen ourselves socially when we hear other people say nasty things. So reflect on water, if you like. So water is impermanent. So just let it go, right? So this painful feeling born of ear contact has arisen in me. This dependent, not independent. Dependent on what? Dependent on contact. Then he sees that each of the 5 aggregates is impermanent. And with his mind, he plunges the very object that is the element water, and he brightens with faith. So here, again, he reflects on what really are the 5 aggregates, and reflect they're all impermanent. And same thing, there is violence and is hurt. He reflects, my body is like water, so why should I bother so much about it? Let me not hurt anyone. So he remembers the parable of the saw, which is about non-violence. And in this way, I will summarize here, if he can feel himself calm with equanimity, that's fine. If he feels that he cannot, then he will reflect on the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, and then if he can feel calm and peaceful, he says, okay, that's good. I have done my practice on water. All right. Okay, let's go further down. Next element. Okay, I've summarized for you there. So now fire element. So if you can reflect on the fire element, what is the fire element? Maybe internal or external. Okay, further down. So here, internal fire element, avusa, whatever that is fire, fiery and clung to internally and individually, belonging to oneself, namely, that by which one is warm, ages, and burns. Okay. This heat warms us, and we also decay because of this heat. So that we have this called metabolism in modern times, and it burns, right? This is burning, rusting, all right? So our body also burns up, decay. That by which what is eaten, drunk, chewed, and tasted gets completely digested. Right? So this is, again, metabolism. And whatever else has the quality of heat and fire. So that's the internal fire element. Then there is the external fire element you see around us, right? So same thing, with internal fire element, external fire element, they are the same. So there's nothing to own there. This is not mine, this I'm not, this is not myself. So we distance ourselves. Revulse means you distance yourself from the fire element, not attached to it, not being proud of it, you're part of it. We let go of that idea. So now Sāriputta talks about the fire element as external reality. So he says there comes a time when the external fire element is agitated. It burns up villages, towns, cities, districts, and countries. It goes out due to lack of fuel only when it comes to green grass or to a road or to a rock or to water or to a pleasant stretch of level land. So we are reminded of the forest fires in those days. But then Sāriputta says there comes a time, Avusa, when they seek to start fire even with a cock's feather or hide paring. And when this, okay, further up please, and when this external fire element, great as it is seen to be impermanent, right? Even this fire goes out. what more of the fire inside us, the heat. You can, here it's interesting. It's as if the Sāriputta is talking about there comes a time when the whole world is going to be very cold. There's no more heat. So this heat will disappear. So what more the heat inside us? We cannot be attached to it. We've got to let it go, right? So here, again, we use the fire element and reflect. It is like it comes and goes. It's impermanence, right? So it's dependent on contact through the 5 aggregates again. So here, the 5 aggregates are brought in again. Summarize here for you. You can see the italics. Okay, further down. And this Samvega, we are reminded to reflect on how calm am I? How peaceful am I? Reflect on the 3 jewels. Reflect on the 3 jewels so that we are peaceful and we're calm. If we can't, then we say, oh, I better work harder to calm myself. Let me try harder until he is actually calm, then he's happy with it. Now, same thing with the wind element. Here, I will summarize for you. Okay, let's go further down. What is the wind element? It's wind element, either internal or external. The internal wind element, anything that is wind, that is airy or windy, that is inside us. We have upgoing winds, burping, downgoing winds, winds of the belly, the flatulence, wind that course through the limbs, in breath, out breath, or further up, any kind of wind, anything that is airy within our body. And both this, the air inside us, the air outside us, they are the same. We should not own it. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. So we reflect on the internal wind element. Even this wind blows around, it's so strong, it can move roofs away, even small buildings get flattened, and so on. So this wind will die down one day. So even this wind is impermanent. So what about this wind inside my body? It's also impermanent. So I cannot own it in any way. I, me, or mine, or I, mine, or I am, right? Then so we reflect on the wind, we let it go. When someone says nasty things, we just say, okay, I'm going to be like the wind. The wind comes, the wind goes. And he reflects on the 3 jewels. Okay, further down. And he becomes calm. And if he does not become calm, he says, oh, I better do this properly, Samvega, right? And then he practices calmness, then he's happy, right? So that is the 4th element. Now there's a little surprise here. Look at this section 26. Although the 4 elements are mentioned, Sāriputta adds a little note here on the 5th element. Just a few lines, 26. Also, just as when space is enclosed by timber, creepers for binding by grass and clay, it is reckoned as a house. Even so, when a space is enclosed by bones and sinews, flesh and skin, it is reckoned as form. All right? So this is an interesting way of defining ourselves. This body occupies space. That's what it is. All right? So this is what Sāriputta is saying. There is this space around us. So this is the 5th element. Now in the last part, Sāriputta puts all together how the 5 aggregates go into 12 derived elements. In other words, the internal senses, external senses. 27. If I was so, internally, the eye is intact, in other words, unimpaired, it's not damaged, but no external forms come into its range, and there is no appropriate conscious engagement, meaning there's no attention, okay? Then there is no appearance of that class of consciousness. Here Sāriputta is talking about how does the I consciousness arise. You must have the I faculty, form, I consciousness. So when the three are present, and there is contact, there is consciousness. Okay, this one you've heard before. So let's go down. And if I was so internally, so here I've already said this, no? If all the 3 points are there, the organ, the faculty, and then the object comes within range, and there is appropriate conscious engagement, in other words, attention, then I consciousness arises. The form arises. You can see form. The form in what has thus come into being is grouped in the form aggregate. So what you see is the form aggregate. The feeling that you get from it is the feeling aggregate. The perception, what you remember, what you recall, is the perception aggregate. The formations, the ideas you have, the actions you want to do is the formations aggregate, sankhara. And the consciousness that's aware of all this, what's going on, is grouped into the consciousness aggregate, vijnana. Right? He understands this. This indeed is how there comes to being the grouping, gathering, and accumulation of things into these 5 aggregates of clinging. So here, in other words, how do these 5 aggregates arise? So there you are. I see something, and then I see form. There is feeling. I remember what this is. I recall what this is. And then I form ideas about it. I act on it. And there is this consciousness. So these are the 5 aggregates. These are the 5 aggregates arise through these actions. That's the meaning here. Now, this has been said by the Blessed One. He who sees dependent arising sees Dharma. He who sees Dharma sees dependent arising. So here Sāriputta is summarizing all what has been said above here. The eye sees something and there is form. So this is dependent arising. You see Dharma here refers to the states of experience. So, and these 5 aggregates are dependently arisen. So this is what has been spoken here. See, all the 5 aggregates have arisen through our experience. The desire, indulgence, inclination, relishing based on the 5 aggregates of clinging is the arising of suffering, right? Now, Sāriputta goes to the Four Noble Truths. He says, when you are attached to this, then there is a rising of suffering. And when you remove the removal of lustful desire, abandoning the lustful desire, that is the ending of suffering. To that extent, too, also, much has been done by that monk, right? So we let go of all that. Same thing with ears and sound. So here, let me summarize, okay? So you see, you hear sound, and you say, okay, there is contact because there's attention, and then you hear sounds, and then you feel about it, you like it, you don't like it, and then you perceive it. There's perception recognizing it, and then you form ideas, you act on it, all right? And there is a consciousness. So that's how the 5 aggregates arise. And we treat this as the Four Noble Truths. This is what it is, and then we letting go of the attachment, then we won't suffer. If you're attached, we will suffer. So we apply the Four Noble Truths in that way. And further down, next pair is there. Now all these I've summarized already. So we go on to the next pair, nose and smell, same thing. So when you smell something, you notice how this contact arises through smell, and you say, okay, there is this smell, and then there is the feeling behind it. It's a perception, formation, consciousness. The 5 aggregates arise with my experience of this smelling. Right? There you are, all these 5 aggregates, all right? And so I won't be attached to it, because if I'm attached to it, then suffering will arise. So I let it go, suffering will not arise. Okay, further down, next set. Tongue and taste, the same thing, right? We see this tongue, and next time you eat food, you feel this taste arising. You say, oh, okay, this is taste. Taste is the form a form aggregate. All right, and then there is feeling. You feel, and then there's perception. There is the formations. There is consciousness behind all this experience, just through tasting. You see the five aggregates through tasting. Then all these are dependently a reason. If you're not attached to it, there is no suffering. Because suffering depends on all this attachment, it arises in that way, right? Then if you're not attached to this, you just let it go, there is no suffering. Let's go further down, the body. Further, some more, go down. Right, the body, okay. So here, same thing, right? The body, you're feeling hot and cold, or you feel pain because of you fell down or someone hit you accidentally even. So same thing, you say, okay, there is this body, right? So first aggregate, there is feeling, because the body there's feeling, and there is this perception. We recall the past to it through this experience. And then there is this present action you're putting into formations, and all this happens because you have consciousness. And you reflect it all dependently a reason to many conditions, and you let them go. That way, there's no suffering. And the last one is the mind and thoughts, isn't it? Go down some more. Right, so mind and mind object. Okay, this is a bit tricky, the mind, because it's not physical. So here, same thing, the thoughts come. So thoughts are regarded as external, comes to the mind, and then we think about it. And we say, okay, this happy thought, this unhappy thought, so there is feeling following it, right? So we have to learn to understand the nature of thoughts, okay? Now, very often we hear the sutta, but we forget it, you know, when thoughts do come to us, we suffer, right? We get into moods and we are not able to handle ourselves because we forget the teaching. So here's a time to remember it. So feelings arise, we let it go. Perception arise, we let it go. Formations arise, we let it go. And then there's this consciousness, we let it go also. Because they're all dependently a reason, and we're not attached to it. So these are the truths, right? You have the five aggregates and the Four Noble Truths, all present in that teaching. To that extent, too, so much has been done by the practitioner. Here, the monk can be us is when we are practicing. The Venerable Sāriputta said this, the monks joyfully approve of the Venerable Sāriputta's word. So you can see how amazing, how deep this sutta is, and the way Sāriputta teaches it shows a teacher of great wisdom, right? You may wonder, wow, what did I hear, you know? So you look at it again, look at the notes, the summary, and you begin to see how Sāriputta starts off with all the teachings, and he goes on with he starts with the Four Noble Truths, and then he goes on to talk about suffering. He takes the last item, five aggregates, and he takes the first item, form, goes on to talk about the four elements, and he goes through one by one in detail the four elements. And he brings in the Four Noble Truths again, reminding us not to get caught up with it, right? He also shows how the five aggregates arise through our experience of the senses. So you see many of the teachings being interwoven. So there you are, okay? You have 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Teacher Piya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Dear brothers and sisters, you may unmute yourself to ask your questions, or you may type it in the chat box. Thank you.
Okay.
Brother Piya, there is no question at the moment in the chat box.
Right now I can take photo first. Yes, we have 4 minutes. Any questions? You will notice the Sariputta style, you know, it is very profound. So that's why the Abhidhamma scholars, they attribute him as the founder, as their founding teacher. All right. So the wording is simple. Everything looks, you read through, you say, oh, I know it's about Four Noble Truths, about aggregates. But then the way they interact, is something you need to reflect, right? So take your time and reflect on the Hathipadopama Sutta, and then you find the meaning becomes deep. Maybe you can write some short notes, or maybe the notes might become very long after a while. You see how they're all interconnected. Okay? Otherwise, just take one part which relates to you, and you say, oh, this I understand, and I want to see this in my practice. Okay, and you find you can use one of the elements. You don't have to use all the 4 elements or 5 elements. You just take one, your favorite element. Right? Space is not mentioned in detail here, but it is mentioned in the Mahā Sutta. So no questions, huh? Well, I'm happy that I finished teaching you this sutta, which I thought was easy at first, and then later you find it's quite profound. Actually, the words are easy. This is a typical sutta. The words are very easy, very simple, but the meaning is profound, right? And if you read through it too quickly, you miss a lot of things. So this is why you see Sāriputta was in a masterly way connecting the various teachings that we already know, the basic teachings. So what are the teachings here? Four Noble Truths, 5 aggregates, the 6 internal senses, 6 external senses, and then the 3 characteristics. Any questions? Last chance, you got about 1 minute.
Sadhu, Teacher Piya, Pamuja here.
Yes, Pamuja.
So if one is in pain, also have to let go.
Yeah. In fact, it's this is what the psychiatrists will tell you nowadays. They've been learning a lot about Buddhism, I mean, we suffer pain because we were attached to it, right? There is this teaching on the 2 pains, right? Remember, the Buddha told this old man, he says, although my body is sick, let not my mind be sick. So body pain, mind pain, there are 2 different kinds of pain. Let's say we fall down and we feel pain, the body feels it. This is what the Sāriputta says in the sutta. We have a body, that's why we feel the pain. But don't get attached to it. Don't get angry. What do we do when we fall down? We scold the floor, or we find someone to blame. We get angry. We try to sue somebody, right? I mean, that's what we do in Singapore anyway. So, on the other hand, if you're a practicing Buddhist, if you do get hurt or fall down, you say, oh, this is painful. Of course, you acknowledge it. Even a Buddhist feels pain. But he knows the pain is in the body. He doesn't want it to be in the mind. He says, there is this pain. Where is the pain? So he observes, notices, examines, and then he heals himself that way. See? So you watch the pain, and then you get rid of the pain by simply watching the pain. So in that way, the Buddha says the pain only stays on the body level. It doesn't go up to the mind level. Okay? So I mean, that's the simple answer. We have talked about this in one of the lessons.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other question? Yes? Okay. I think time's up already. But if you can still ask if you have an urgent question. No more, huh? All right. Let's close with a short reflection. Well, you have put in great effort and patience to listen to this Mahā Hathipadopama Sutta, an amazing sutta given by the great Arahant Sāriputta. You have kept the 5 precepts, the 3 refuges, 5 precepts. You have done meditation and listened to the Dharma, reflected on it. These are all very good actions. By the power of all these good actions, may you be well, may you be happy, may we be well, may we be happy. And by all this goodness now, let us send to our loved ones, people we care for, especially those who are sick, that they may get well quickly. Send your thoughts to them. And to yourself too, so that you'll be stronger and healthier and more mindful. And it's also a time we show our gratitude to the 3 jewels, because of whom we are able to gather together to study the teachings and be wiser. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.